Live. Hey, look at that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start recording here too. Should I pretend to be like professional? Like, good evening, everybody. My name is Jason. No.
It's your podcast.
Yeah, I don't know.
You want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
The chance of your being hurt by an atomic bomb is slight. You must know how to protect yourself.
The people of this. But hello, everybody. I'm Jason from Atomic Tai Chi, and this is the Built Different, the People of Taijiquan podcast interview discussion. You know, we're figuring out what it's going to be here. Just I wanted to start talking to some people about some things. So this is that. We are going to have some questions. Somebody's joined. We have the opportunity for people to ask questions if they like. But for now, we're just going to start. I'm going to introduce my guest, my friend, my good friend. I've met online. I don't know, Empty Flower. Were we part of Empty Flower at some point? I
I
don't
think
know.
it was Rum Soaked Fist already by the time we
Okay.
started talking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we met online. We just talked for many years about things, shared our thoughts with other people who usually disagreed with me pretty strongly about most of what I had to say. um but through all you've been there like the whole time, just being just willing to talk about things and be a friend, and I appreciate you having the courage to come onto my podcast and talk about we don't even have a plan to I sent you a list of it. We can talk about anything. So
Right.
yeah, thank you for giving it a shot. And um yeah well, without further ado, just go ahead and let you introduce yourself before we get into some of the things I wanted to talk about.
Sure. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Matt Parsons, and I have been practicing Taijiquan for 15 years now. Um, yeah. When I started practicing, it was 2009. In about 2 months, it'll be 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I started off doing Chen Tai Chi, and I was paralyzed on the left side of my body after a stroke. And so when I first started doing Tai Chi, I was literally sitting in a chair, and the only arm that worked was my right. The left was all curled up like this and like stuck to my chest, and I was like all nasty stroke body sort of
Hmm.
thing, tons of tension and spasms and nervous system stuff doing weird things. And I just randomly dislocated my knee after I started recovering. One day I had
That'll
a
happen, I guess.
spasm and my knee dislocated, went 90 degrees. I was like, oh, hell, okay.
That's wild.
Yeah, yeah. So, I came from a place of extreme illness to being fairly healthy now. I mean, I still have some chronic conditions like spinal arthritis and psoriatic disease.
Okay.
Um, but that said, I'm in much better health than most people with the disease severity that I have would ever expect.
And that's very interesting. So you're talking about um, losing function in your arm, or
Yeah,
half your body, right? Your
yeah, yeah.
finger,
Both
like,
of them work now.
yeah. So, well, what sort of, I mean, are you allowed to even or willing to talk about like the process itself? Like, what sort of techniques you would use for
Oh,
like
sure,
approaching
sure.
that?
So, as I mentioned, I was sitting in a chair
Yeah.
and I was doing Chen Shi Tai Chi. So, for those that aren't aware, Chen Shi Tai Chi is the origin of all Tai Chi styles. It came from this family and their village. Um,
Once,
and there are some people that would say, Jiao Bao has an equally legitimate claim, and I'm not going to argue with that. That's not my horse to bet on or anything. So,
I wish I had heard any of that. My dogs, you can't hear my dogs because of my headset, but the whole time you were talking, I have no idea what they were barking at, but they were just going crazy. But I heard you're doing chin shi Taijiquan in a
Yes, yes,
chair.
and
Um,
I did a little disclaimer about the authenticity of it being the
hold
origin
on
of
a sec. Hold on one second.
church.
These guys are. What the hell is wrong with you? Go go to bed. In there. One second. All right. All right. Sorry about that. These guys, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. They are just getting involved in everything I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, I'm not much of one for critters myself.
I love them to death, but
Yeah, I got a 9-month-old infant.
so
That's enough.
chin style.
So I started off doing the silk reeling exercises.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize that those exercises were something that was kind of put together by various Chen family members in the 70s.
Okay.
So basically, what happened was, the Chinese government asked the Chen family members, like, hey, where's your Neigong? All of the other Tai Chi people have Neigong. Where's the Chen style Neigong? And they said, we don't do Neigong. We do form. We do form and form and form. And we grind out form and we push and fight and we push and fight and form. So this material is something they literally made up, like, I don't know, 50 years ago or so, right out of
Okay.
their pockets, basically. I mean, they'd had decades of experience doing the Chen family arts, but like, how do you teach somebody the very basics, the fractal patterns that everything else can build off of, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're not trying to teach somebody who's going to be living with you or in the same neighborhood, for decades in the future, you have to teach somebody in a different manner. So that's how I started off, was doing the silk reeling exercises. And my teacher for Chen, he was, I guess you could say, an acquaintance of Chen Xiaowang's.
Okay.
He smoked cigars with Chen Xiaowang, actually. That's how I met my teacher. He was my mentor in the tobacco industry. When I was a younger man, I worked in cigars. And
Cigars. That's an interesting.
so I actually learned most of my Tai Chi in a cigar factory.
Okay. I mean, that's as well as anywhere, right?
Right. And so my friend, he had been doing Yang style for, I don't know, 15, 20 years for back issues. And then he met Chen Xiaowang, and, he saw like Fa Jin and all of this spirally stuff. And he's like, man, this guy probably knows how to fight with that art. And I don't know how to fight with my art.
Huh.
So he had done Wing Chun through, I think it was Augustine Fong and Samuel Kwok.
Mm-hmm.
And he had also done Shaolin Do with Jake Mace, of all people.
Wait, how is Jake Mace involved in Shaolin Do?
His Shaolin system is Shaolin Do. His
Oh,
dad,
so he was just a student of Shaolin Do?
his dad was, actually,
Okay.
and so they broke off from the Shaolin Do system, and then I believe it was Sin Tay who sued them, and that's when we found out that Shaolin Do was completely made up by Sin Tay in the legal documents that's out there.
Oh, wow. Well, that's crazy. I know, like, Bruce Ryder used to, he was a practicer of the system. I don't know, like, how, Hardy took him. I know he did it for a long time, but he was pretty tough, but he was also, like, huge.
Right.
He's still around. I mean, I'm like, I think of, like, in past tense, but no, he's still around. I mean, I should ask about that. I should see if he can come talk. But,
Yeah.
but getting back to the exercises themselves, when you talk about silk reeling, like, a lot of people, like, when I hear them talk about silk reeling, especially Chen style silk reeling, they're talking about these spirally movements, like whole body movements. So if you're in a chair, how are you doing that sort of movement?
Well, when you only have one arm,
Right? Yeah.
That's your whole body, right?
Okay.
Sorry, but
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
it's just one of those things. The real purpose of those exercises is to link the lower belly out to your hands, right?
Mhm.
And that way
Okay.
you can use your lower belly like a transmission between your steps and your punches
Okay.
or throws or whatever it is you're trying to apply. Um, so sitting in a chair is actually not that big of a hindrance. And a lot of Chen style Tai Chi teachers will recommend that people practice with a small stool.
Hmm.
Because when you have that small stool, you understand exactly the height you're supposed to be practicing the form. So the stool really shouldn't be, like any higher than your knee.
Yeah.
It should
That's
be a
a
very small stool. And so,
well, I get that. It's like a well, which reminds me of Dong Yingji, Jia. He wrote the Ghost wrote a manual for Yang Cheng Fu before he soften the art, I guess, so to speak, make
right.
it more, took out the stuff out there. And in that, he's saying that, the hip should be level with the knees. And I think that's why people are like, well, we're not trying to do that right now. We want something that these office workers and these, old people can do. So, we just want 10 points. We don't need 20 whole points. All right. Just 10. 10 is fine.
These Manchu nobles who just don't want to do all that, right?
Right, exactly. Well, not even the Manchu nobles. This is like the 20s, right?
Oh, okay. So this was
Yeah,
Republican era. Okay.
yeah, Yang Cheng. No, this is like Yang Cheng Fu, like in the 1920s when it's like kind of sort of like became public. Everybody was like, "Hey, we got Tai Chi now," and
Right.
and then Yang Cheng Fu was like, "Okay, well, how am I going to get it?" I mean, I'm being a little cynical about this, but I think it's documented he was trying to increase market share by making things a little bit softer. But anyhow, I'm getting detracting from you talking, which is
Yeah, no,
about
it's fine. It's fine. It's what we do, right? Like we
well, yeah.
have tangents about these arts that are very interesting at times, at least to us.
It's interesting with this though is the silk reeling itself, like Dong Yingjia's book, which I can't remember, like it was in the 50s or something like that. He uses the silk reeling as a term, but he's not describing it in that spirally sort of way. We talk about spiral movements, but he's really talking about it in the terms of sort of like grabbing onto the energy in a sense of being stored and ready to release energy at any time. Like it's a sort of like a readiness, and I can see where it kind of goes hand in hand with that idea. But then also there's a recently translated work on the Brennan translation called Stages of Learning Taijiquan that was published in 1936. And really,
Is
this is
that
a
by?
it's by Shin Jiazen. He's actually a Chen stylist.
Okay.
And he does talk about positive and negative silk reeling, not as exercises, but as being like, when we do our ward off and our rollback, or say like a rollback is a perfect example that like on a rollback, as we're coming back, we've got a positive silk reeling here in the left arm that's doing but you can't see it because there's a thing in the way. But here, but we've got like a positive ward off, like an expanding kind of ward off, and that's what he calls like a positive silk reeling.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is kind of a pulling coming from the other direction here,
And that's a negative, yeah.
and that's a negative silk reeling, right? And so but this is like 1936. He describes it from that perspective, but again, he's not talking about a particular exercise like we are familiar with, like silk reeling exercise or silk, spiraling.
Right. So it's a concept of Taijiquan
Yeah.
that
Sure.
ultimately comes down to like, is something coming into your body and down, or is something coming up from your body and out? So that's the positive, and this is the negative. Okay. So I mean, it's really not that hard.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple concept.
Okay.
The thing is, a lot of people want to take it and make it a huge thing. So if you look at like how they wind and coil actual silk like off of a cocoon, it's
Sure.
really interesting, And so if you take that analogy of silk, you have a reel, you have the cocoon, you have then there's thread that needs to be made from it, so there's all of these different things that have to be done to make silk, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of an analogy that most Chinese people of the time would know. They've seen it, they've seen sericulture, they've seen the processing, unless it's like some sort of secretive silk guild, but after a while things kind of spread out. And basically the idea is that it's your intent. Okay, so if your intent is going up and out, that's positive. If your intent is going in and out, that's negative. So you have this way and you have this way.
Sure.
It's just, are you going up or down on the circle? And so when you look at something like rollback, yes, you are expressing two different kinds of energy at the same time because your arms are moving. One is going in toward your body and the other is going away from your body, and so then when you go into like G and on, this one comes back in, so then it becomes a negative again. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're constantly switching back and forth. Now, when we talk about other styles of Taijiquan, the silk reeling, the spiraling, I'm told it really happens due to the weight shifting. So in Chen style, I studied the Chen Xiaowang and a little bit of the Hong Jin Sheng lineage. And basically what I can say is that everything is this positive negative thing, but most people aren't understanding that has an application along this like 90-degree vector. So you have like your center line and 45 degrees going off this way and 45 degrees going off this way, right? So you go up your center line and then you go out to this 45-degree point and you come back, okay? So you can start off with triangles and then go to squares and then circles. But the idea is ultimately that you're kind of breaking down how your intent is moving through your body in smaller and smaller portions. And okay, well, now I can notice the weight shifting. This leg is all full. That's intent, right? Like you don't have to physically move to shift your weight.
Yeah.
So, when we really come down to it, it's what is your intent doing? And so then when we apply that to push hands, right, when you have enough interoception that you can feel yourself, you need to then feel somebody else. So if you know yourself, you know somebody else, because we're all humans, we have similar structures, etc. Some people have different abnormalities or derangements, whatever you want to call them. Like I have small curvature in my thoracic spine still.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Very small. I no longer qualify for the scoliosis diagnosis, thankfully. So,
is that due to your practice, or?
Yeah, that actually came about after I started doing Bagua.
I can see that. Yeah, with that the posture.
Yeah. So I was doing these silk reeling exercises, sitting in a chair with only one arm, right? So I was doing positive and negative, and just trying to get the intent down into my gut as much as I could. And the first thing to wake up was my left hand. After my
that's
right
just from focusing on the right and not doing anything, not thinking about the left at all.
No, I mean, this thing was like pinned against my arm, man. And
well, maybe so like you weren't like thinking like intent wise, you weren't like trying to mirror it along there or anything. You're just saying just doing the right hand. Just
doing the right hand and smoking a lot of weed. And just really trying to, because I honestly didn't have any expectations as to what it would do for me, right? This was before Affordable Care Act. I didn't have health insurance available to me. The pre-existing condition thing. It's like, oh yeah, you're shit out of luck if you didn't have insurance already. Haha. Yeah. So, that was pretty difficult, and I was really desperate, honestly. I mean, that's what it came down to. So a friend of mine, after I almost drunk myself to death, he was like, hey, I'll teach you some Tai Chi, like there's nothing else you're doing good for yourself right now. You give it a try.
I understand that. If you got nothing else, you got Tai Chi. All right, okay. You do it in a chair, bud. No.
Yeah. And so I mean, he was really playing with it. He was about twice, a little bit more than twice my age. So I think I was 23. He was like 50, and he was like, I look at you and it makes me really sad because you're 23 years old. You should be out there partying and fucking and dancing and doing all kinds of fun stuff. And instead you're crippled. And this just fucking makes me really sad.
Oh,
and
you're bumming me out, dude. Stop being so crippled.
Yeah. Basically, he's like, I got something for you. So he tried to start me on the Chen style silk reeling stuff, and he quickly found out like my wrists were too weak to do some of that stuff. Like I couldn't maintain the hand shapes and get my arms out far enough. So I actually did Wing Chun first.
Okay.
I learned the Sulim Tao, I don't know, in about 2, 3 months on one side. And,
What's it? What? Oh, what? I don't know. I'm talking like Shaolin or something. The guy had one arm or something. They cut the anyhow. There's like a brand of one arm kung fu. You could. I mean, you could have gone down that path and never got your
yeah,
arm
well,
back.
I mean,
But
there's the guy in Penchak Silat that only had one arm and one leg or something, and
oh, wow.
apparently he was super deadly because he
He had
knew
to
all
work
these
hard to kick
angles.
ass, I guess. Sorry. Yeah, go. You started doing Wing Chun with one hand. You did Sulam Tom with one hand, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So I started doing Wing Chun with one hand, and then he started to try and get me to do the left one, So it was like stuck like this, and I tried to just move it
Mhm.
away from my chest a little bit, and maybe try to rotate it
Okay.
a little bit. So like something like that, just I would try, like I had a very small range of movement, but it was
Yeah.
something, and it was more than I had before.
All right. Right.
And so as I kept trying, eventually the left hand woke up, and yeah, I was able to regain my wrist functionality first. Actually, my hand came first, and then the rest of the arm started to come along after that. And I also got assistance from a myofascial release practitioner.
Ooh.
Um,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
That's
that was very helpful. Her name is Karen Sue Bravo.
was that like just direct work on that appendage?
No, no, she actually spent most of the time on my calves.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But was it like well, was it like a like raw finger posture where they go like they do systematically the whole
So
thing or
Rolfing is very rough in comparison to what she does.
okay.
So this is John Barnes myofascial release. It's a very specific type of myofascial release. It's very
Okay.
gentle. A lot of it has to do with like it's almost like if you were to put your finger on like a violin bow,
Mm.
and kind of like move it back and forth a little bit. Um, that's the only thing I can really think of to explain it to somebody is like if you had like a stretched out rubber band and somebody just kind of like
Okay.
did a little bit and eventually it released and relaxed, So that's about the most I could compare it to is very gentle. It felt very elastic within my body. I felt a lot of force referral.
Okay.
And literally within one session, my left arm was mostly mobilized again.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, from working on your calves mainly, and it helped.
She did do some direct stuff on my shoulder and my arm and neck, but the
Okay.
most of the session was on my legs. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And that's interesting. Like the nerve stuff. It kind of reminds me of like Kill Bill, right? Are you familiar with the movie? Move your
Yeah.
big toe, wiggle your big toe. But but even more so than that, like that's like just one of those tropes that is sort of associated with like martial arts in general and internal martial arts in particular. You
Right.
know, like I remember growing up reading Dune. I don't know if you're a fan of the Dune
Oh
series, right?
yeah, yeah. I read them all. Except
Yeah.
for the sons, those are garbage.
Yeah, I haven't read it. I'm like, what? Who's this other Herbert? Herbert? Is that the guy on Family Guy? No, but Herbert the pervert? No, but no, like the Bene Gesserit, like the Prana Bindu, like just like sort of like awareness of their nervous system and like control that comes from that awareness. That really like kind of spoke to me when I started seeing that same sort of thing in the internal martial arts where we start looking at awareness of the body and like using intention to lead energy and things of that nature. But then like you're saying with the myofascial release, that's sort of the other side of the coin there that like we can think about it all you want, but you've got to have some sort of physical component sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I really credit a lot of my recovery to manual therapy.
Yeah.
I had that myofascial release specialist work on me a couple of times, and she was really effective, but I just couldn't afford to work with her regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in Sacramento about 10 years ago. There was a really great chiropractor that I would go to here about two times a week or so.
Okay.
And he had trained with Tom Myers, who wrote that Anatomy Trains book.
Okay.
And
Anatomy trains. Is that where like the kinetic chain?
yeah, yeah, he basically is saying that there's like kinetic fascial trains along, the Chinese medicine organ meridian paths, basically. So if
Oh
you
yeah,
ever
okay.
look at the anatomy trains, as you read the book, he's like, okay, so there's this train, and it kind of corresponds to this organ from Chinese medicine,
Oh.
or organ path, But when we look at Chinese medicine, it's a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Complicated than a lot of us think. Because there's meridians, you have muscle tendon meridians, you have organ meridians, you have you have the Huang, which is like these tiny little connecting meridians between the big ones. Then
Yeah. You have 20 kinds of chi.
Yeah, 20 kinds of chi, and you have the eight extraordinary meridians, right? So
Yeah.
you have the 12 organ meridians that work on the post heaven chi, and then you have the eight extraordinaries that work on the pre heaven chi.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these martial arts actually have, especially the Zhangrong Chow stuff that I've trained, I find has very targeted exercises for a lot of these meridians, and the questions that I had when I first started getting into Xingyi and Bagua were basically like, how do these elemental things and these trigrams and stuff relate to my body? How do they relate to my mind? How do they relate to this and that and the other? And a lot of people just couldn't tell me. They're like, I don't have any interest in that. I just want to fight, and I like to fight, and I don't do medicine, and that's it.
Teacher said do this, I do this.
Right. And so it was kind of difficult trying to find resources for a lot of these arts. Particularly Bagua has an issue with being so splintered. They talk about the main families of Taijiquan. Well, there's what, 81 people that paid to have their name on Dong Haichuan's stele as a,
That's right. Well, and the thing, like the Tai Chi too, is just like there's you got the families, but then there's like just all kinds of wild variants and splinters and stuff out there that's just like, huh?
Yeah, and then you got the people that just do another martial art entirely, and they use the 24 form, and they're like, I do Tai Chi.
Yeah. See, we do Tai Chi. Yeah. But yeah, that's when you're talking about this whole thing, the silk rilling and the and now there's the meridians and whatnot, and everybody's talking about fascia lately. And but the Jinglu, I think I can't remember. I don't speak Chinese.
Yeah,
Zhonglu, yeah, those being like these kind of like bands of connective tissue and nerve trains that correspond with meridians and points, like where we've got like points where they're knotted, like in the belly. That's a known point, and how those like I went to a seminar where one of the instructor was saying that his teacher considered Rolfing, myofascial release, and like postural integration to be sort of cheat codes for progress in eternal martial arts, because they could kind of go in and manually do stuff that your internal practice would take years to accomplish.
Why would that be a cheat code?
Well, not a cheat. Well, just like using it as a.
This is what I'm having issue with. There's a lot of people out there that have this concept that you have to just practice your way through it. Just keep practicing, and it's gonna fix everything, and that's complete horseshit. How many of these people were acupuncturists, herbalists? They did Tui Na. There's all of these different things that they did to help people directly. Tui Na is incredibly effective. I had Dave Way work on me last summer, and he literally crushed my muscles down to the bone, and I had never felt my arms so free after that, so there's certain things that these arts typically have along with them. You might have a diet that your Shifu wants you to do. You might have all this other stuff too. It's not just kung fu.
Well, definitely. Well, I mean, it's all part of kung fu, right?
Right. Well, and there are the people that would say that kung fu is like a cultural concept from China. It's like, what are you skilled in? What have you put the most time in? That's what you have your kung fu in. So like a really good lawyer would have kung fu, or a chef would have kung fu. I mean,
the tea master ceremony, the tea master story, right? With the tea master and samurai. Yeah.
Well, that's Japan, but Yeah.
Same thing, same concept, right?
Yeah, similar
Yeah.
idea. But the idea is like, no matter what it is you do, you can apply yourself to it and have skill, right?
Yeah.
The proverb, or not proverb, but the story that they tell is Cook Ding, right? He was a
Yeah.
butcher, and he's butchering, and I think it was a duke or something comes along, and he's like, "Man, you're really good at this. Like, tell me how you did it." He's like, "Well, the first year I think I went through about 5 knives, and I kept cutting and hitting bones and ruining my knives." He's like, "By the second year I only had to replace my knife twice, and I was starting to learn it." He's like, "Maybe after a decade or so I only needed a knife every 5 or 6 years, well, however it goes." And he goes on and he says, "Eventually I was able to find the spaces, and I haven't had to get a new knife in decades." So there's all these different layers to that story that I'm sure could be broken down a lot more succinctly and better than I just put it. But the idea is that as you keep applying yourself to it, you're going to get so good that from an outsider's perspective, it might seem miraculous.
Yeah.
He's like, "Wait a minute, this guy just shoved a knife into like 3 places in this carcass, and it fell apart into all the cuts perfectly. Like, how the hell did he do that?" Well, he knows how.
Well, there's an example. I don't know how old the actual video is, but I saw it recently. It's a clip of Gordon Ramsay cutting down a chicken carcass blindfolded.
Yeah.
Yeah. So same sort of. He's like, just like, they're like, okay, well, there you go, man. I mean, he's not quite Cook Ding level, but still pretty impressive by modern
Yeah.
standards there. But yeah, that's that whole thing, like you're saying, like I don't think he meant cheat code is like disparagingly, like, oh, you're cheating,
Right.
you shouldn't do that. But cheat code, like, hey, if you want to, like, knock a couple years off your, well, not a couple years off your progress, but a couple years work off your effort to get further,
Right.
that doing something like that, body work is essential. And like, I found a lot of times that the body work goes hand in hand. The body workers go hand in hand with Tai Chi practitioners. And actually, if there's any veterans that are watching this, are you a veteran? I don't know. Weren't you in the Navy?
No,
Oh.
I never got caught up in that machine.
Yeah, well, I'm a veteran, and there's some kind of program where the VA is financing massage school. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, so that's something. In Florida, there's like a 500-hour requirement. There's a school in Melbourne that does that. So I'm looking at taking advantage of that program next year to um, go to massage school on the government dime.
Yeah, I'm going to my college currently on the government dime.
Nice.
If you might want to check out Department of Rehabilitation, if VA doesn't cover anything, there's certain programs you could get into. Department of Rehabilitation is federal, and every county has their own version. So
Yeah. Well, I've got I think this is going to work out pretty well that it's already going. But once I've actually got the certification, you can actually do like the tween off specialty and the other, the gua sha, I think, is the other myofascial.
Yeah, I love gua sha. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. I would actually posit that gua sha is less myofascial and more about blood flow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. I know just a tiny little bit about it,
So,
Uh,
a lot of people, when they think of gua sha, they might have some familiarity with like instrument assisted manual therapies. So
yeah.
basically they would go in for your chiropractic. I've had Graston done, so I can kind of compare and contrast the Graston versus gua sha methods. And basically Graston is kind of like the myofascial release stuff with a tool.
Okay.
But gua sha, while it can do that, a lot of it has to do with raising petechiae, and petechiae are very weird bruises. It's like blood under the skin,
Yeah.
and it's bright
Yeah.
red, but it eventually goes away. So my position is that gua sha probably has more to do with blood stagnation, and
Yeah.
getting rid of that than it would with the myofascial stuff.
Yeah. I'm not even really, like, I'm not 100% sure how it works, but yeah.
Yeah.
What was
I'm just talking from a patient perspective. So,
yeah. Well,
um,
the what do you call the patchoulis? No, the patrocles or whatever they are.
petechiae.
Petechiae. I guess it's just like smaller versions of what you would get after an intense cupping, maybe.
Yeah, you could say
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a little bit of cupping done, but I'm not familiar enough with it to speak on it, honestly.
Yeah.
But that is the one thing that I would say is the biggest difference is like we have a different concept of the body than they did in China. So they were very much about blood flow and heat management within the body in
Yeah.
Chinese
Okay.
medical concept. Same with Tibetan. You got to manage your internal fire, and your blood flow has to be good. And Tibetan medicine is really interesting because it's got some influences from China, but also India, Persia, and Greece. So
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, hey, but why not, right? Mix it
yeah.
up.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people that just don't know that Alexandrian syncretism is a huge force in our culture, in development, not only in the West. Alexander the Great went as far as Pakistan, basically,
Oh, wow.
and into like modern Afghanistan.
Yeah.
He had Greco-Persians on the western borders of China.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
If we look at like the introduction of Buddhism to China, a lot of it was brought over by Greco-Persian people.
Oh, okay. I had no idea. Just yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah. So it's really interesting stuff.
Huh.
When you look at the spread of Vajrayana Buddhism, particularly,
Okay.
yeah, it gets to be interesting, and you find out about all of these cycles of Buddhism being made illegal and re-legalized, and we're going to allow it now if they can farm,
Right. Yeah. It's like, well, how can we cash in on this? All right, now it's illegal. Now it's legal.
Right.
Yeah, it's like we're kind of lost a little. We lost the plot here. You're not allowed to do that anymore.
Well, it had a lot to do with politics. Basically, what happened
Yeah.
was a lot of these Greco-Persian Christians and Buddhists had helped put down a rebellion in southern China. And because of that, over like the next century, they became really politically powerful. Like they were successful, they made a lot of money, but they weren't allowed to marry into Chinese culture and families. So because of that, they had to take all of their brides from outside of China, and so then they're ethnically distinct from everybody else, and now we're going to outlaw their religion and their vegetarian restaurants and all this other stuff.
Oh,
And
geez.
yeah.
I mean, that's just the thing. Like, it's yeah, I don't want to get too much into the political stuff, but it's always the same. Like powers, they're gonna deny someone something based upon some sort of difference until they get a benefit because of that difference, and then they'll, oh no, deny you have that difference, that it's not worth the benefit.
Right. Don't you know
Yeah,
that doesn't exist? You're just Chinese. So.
exactly right. What are you complaining about? That's crazy. So going kind of backtracking a little bit on this because it's
Yeah.
the body, right, and the body work and the importance of that. Like we talk about Kung Fu and like talking with Ray, that was a great interview. I watched it earlier today. And the idea of, like, especially in the internal Kung Fu, we're getting a page a day. We're not like coming in and getting like a whole thing. We're just like every day is like a little bit. And my own research has sort of led me into looking at how the white tissue is cultivated and developed, connective tissue is cultivated and developed, to reduce injury and increase elasticity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I know we've talked about like the silk and the strand inside the body before.
Yeah.
So how would you say that sort of like is all related, perhaps?
So the silk and the strand inside the body, in my opinion, has to do with the extensive ability of the fascia, because the fascia can extend and contract, right?
Yeah.
So can your muscles. You have extensive and contractive muscles. Okay, so you have different tissues that are capable of different things. And so when we think about that, like when we're touching somebody else, if we're sensitive enough to be able to feel that, I'm really not. I'm pretty much deaf.
Yeah.
Like you got to shout at me for me to be able to feel, what's going on inside your body, basically.
Yeah. I'd
So,
probably say the same way. Like at this point, like a little bit, like if I try and they let me, like I can kind of feel like, okay, there's the muscles and stuff, or like if I'm doing a massage or something. But as far as like in a fighting type situation, like, yeah, I'm not at that level where I can read that. And that's like, and not the sidetrack, but that was that discussion that got me kicked out of the Fajin project. If somebody had, was like, they're jumping on this fascia train, the fascia bandwagon and saying, oh, okay, well, here, I've met this person on the street. They've never done any kung fu in their life. How are you doing, person? You've never met me, have you? And then they like demonstrate this like little, basically wedge trick where like they kind of make a sort of wedge, the person pushes on them, and then they just sort of drive their mass forward and it lifts them up, right? And they say, this is me using my fascia. And then they say, I can show you how to do it. And so then the person does a little wedge trick, right? And so I'm like, well, okay, well, and they're like, well, the classes don't talk about fascia. I'm like, well, they do, but they say that it takes like, years of practice once you've mastered the, feet, inches, hundreds parts, thousands parts under the guidance of a master, with the right kind of training, you might achieve this ability. Right. And so like, that's kind of like what you're saying now is like, we've both been doing this for a year or two, right? And I can't really hear it the way it's actually going to capture somebody's fascia at that level. I'm not trying to push an agenda here. It just kind of reminded me of that when you said that it's sort of a really cultivated ability when we talk about using it offensively like that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and so that's the other thing too is Taiji was kind of, it was developed from the Chen family art, and a lot of what made the Chen family guys famous is that they could go out at the behest of the government and put down like little rebellions and stuff. Like it was said,
Okay.
one of the Chen ancestors was a general, but back then that was basically like the county sheriff.
All right.
So yeah, he had, some sort of like military. He could like maybe draft some people to help him go and fight some stuff. But basically, from what I've read, it sounds like he had to be so skilled that he could duel the bandit leader. So typically what happened was, you'd have these poor people who were, cast out of Chinese society for whatever reason, and they weren't allowed to sleep in the town, whatever reason there was for it. So they had to go out into the mountains, they'd get friends, make a bandit gang, whatever. And the next thing you know, they're terrorizing villages and stealing stuff. And, they're not usually very well armed. They're not usually
Yeah.
really well trained.
Yeah.
Typically what happens is just, somebody's poor enough that they're desperate enough to go and do that. It's very similar to today.
Yeah. It's desperation in
Yeah.
the
So,
situations.
basically you could think of like these Chen guys as like going out to confront the local gang leader, and then challenge him to a duel. And, maybe you don't want to make everybody in the gang that angry, because they could come and burn your village down the next time,
Yeah. Just want to politely suggest that next time they come back, you might just kill them or whatever, but not actually offend them.
Right.
Or
Right.
whatever. I mean,
And so, typically what happened is these guys would go out and they'd duel the bandit leaders. Sometimes they'd reabsorb the bandits into like a military group. Sometimes they would disband. It just really depended on what, the politics of the time were, and
right.
and what was most acceptable to everybody. But yeah, so basically what happened was like Tai Chi, the Chen guys, they developed this push hands thing, basically so they could have like wrestling and dueling matches.
Okay.
So, typically the duels would be like with a pole arm,
Okay.
like a Bondao, something like that, a Sha or a Pi, something, like long with a blade on the end.
Yeah.
And, if you didn't have that, maybe a spear or a sword. And, if you can disarm somebody without killing them, which was what Yang Lechan was famous for, winning spear duels without killing his opponents, you're not only going to gain face, you're going to maybe gain a friend.
Yeah. Thanks for not killing me, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for not killing me. I'd like to learn what you got. You might get some money out of it. So
that's even better, right? Better than a friend, a student.
Yeah, there's certain skills that the Chens developed for reasons that were very different than why we do Taiji now. So Chen, it said, probably married his Sifu's widow, or not Chen, Yang Luchan. Yeah. He married his Sifu's widow. So basically, his Sifu passed away. He had a wife. Yang was still around. They're like, you guys got to leave the village. This isn't a good situation.
This is not, yeah.
But you can't teach the art and say it's Chen style. Like you can't go out there and say it's Chen family arts. So what do you do when you find a woman that's extremely skilled at martial arts? You kind of keep working, right?
Yeah, sure.
how did Yang Luchan and his Sifu's wife develop Taiji after he passed? Like there's all this stuff that we just don't know.
Yeah. Well, I always thought that was interesting that like it was the Wu family that found the salt shop manuals, and that sort of is the standard that people like use
Well,
to
if you look
define
at
it.
it, the Wu family were the landlords of the salt shop.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Chens were renting that from the Wus. That building was the Wu family building.
Was the Chens running it, or was it
Yeah,
someone?
yeah. The Chen. That's Yang
Okay.
Lichun went to learn from the Chens because he was a security guard at a medicine shop or salt shop,
Okay.
and it was the Chens that were running it. And so then, um, what happened was the Wu brothers, they found the documents. Now, there are some people like Damon Smith, and he runs the Woven Energy podcast. He's Paul Andrews' Xingyi teacher. Like Damon Smith will say something like, the Wu brothers were trying to give it like a backstory related to Zhang Sanfeng because he was basically like the current comic book hero of the time.
Yeah.
So like there were all these like little novellas and stuff written about Zhang Sanfeng, and so they kind of like found these documents and linked it to Zhang Sanfeng for marketing purposes, maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows? I've seen people talk about their great grandmaster, like he was some sort of this, that, or the other, and then you find out, oh well, yeah, he did that, but he was actually the janitor, or he wasn't a doctor at the hospital.
Well, yeah, that's like one of the like when we start talking about the stories about the Yang family, like like early Wu writings about it, they just mentioned a certain Yang of Nanking because Yang Luchan was an illiterate bond servant, and is like, well, we can't have him being our Sifu, we don't want people knowing that, so
Right.
it wasn't like a big and so yeah, they
Well,
had
and
the
that's
Wu
the thing
style,
is, Guangping was known for having really high quality eunuchs. So,
oh wow, yeah,
for whatever reason, that was the eunuch village. So if you wanted a good servant, you would go there. Um,
okay. Yeah, that's well, I guess so. Wow, so yeah, you've been studying the Guangping stuff. How is what else you studied other than that Tai Chi wise, the Chen stuff, and then like now the
Yeah, so
Guangping?
I've done a little bit of the Chen stuff. I've done like I said, I did Chen Shao Wang and the Hong Jun Chen stuff.
Okay,
But it's not good for my knees. I have a natural structural valgus, so like if you put my knees together, my feet don't touch.
yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, I know what you mean there.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and so the Chen style it's not that good for my knees, and so I wanted to do Yang style, but like the Cheng Man Ching is so boring. I can't watch
yeah.
those
Right.
demonstrations, man. Like the stuff the guys like Lita Yin's guys, that stuff's all right.
Okay,
Um,
yeah,
but for the most part, Yang style just it puts me to sleep. So does Wu. I'm not that interested in watching stuff to learn it
yeah,
because it's so damn boring. So yeah, Guangping was probably the most interesting Yang style I'd seen because it's kind of got these aspects of Chen, Wu, and Yang all
yeah,
together. And I thought, well, if I wanted to do something, that was probably the one, considering that Kuo Lin Ying whooped Chen Manqing's ass in San Francisco. Uh,
sure, yeah.
A lot of people don't really talk about Chen Manqing wasn't really that good of a martial artist. He was a diplomat, he was a calligrapher, he was a Chinese medicine master, but he sucked at kung fu. He had
Yeah,
tuberculosis. The dude could not fight.
yeah. I mean, I've heard like different, mixed reports about like, oh, he won many fights or he won a couple fights or he scared the heck out of Robert Smith. But like, as far as for like what is actually, documented or verifiable, I don't know, his push hands had a kind of look to it. Like, we always see the videos and like what they said is that he's good at like knowing when to take a step forward to get inside their guard and push, right? Which is kind of it's a good skill,
Yeah.
but I think there's people that push in slightly different ways now, versus like having to take a step forward to make somebody go
Yeah,
back,
and
right?
and and not only that, Kuo Lin Ying, when they had their match, it wasn't push hands. He just beat the shit out of Chen.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not here to play. This isn't a social event. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
here to he just whooped the shit out of him.
Oh, well, he probably deserved it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing is Kuo himself had he had some issues in Taiwan. So basically, he had to come to the U.S. because he was on trial for fraud.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Well, that's, I'm
yeah.
gonna go hide out in
So
the U.S. Yeah. Nobody knows me there.
yeah, Kuo was he was a general in the Kuomintang army, and he was pretty high up in the politics of Taiwan. But eventually, it got to a point where I think he had retired from politics, and somebody asked him, "Hey, let's open up a medicine shop together." So they gave him the startup funds for the medicine shop, and he went and got hookers and booze with his best student and blew it all. And
Oh,
so they sued him. They're like, "Hey, where's our money?" And he's like, "Oh no, I got robbed." And he got his student Peter Kwok to say, "Yeah, we got robbed." And then they fled to the U.S.
oh,
before
geez.
the trial could end. And after Kuo passed away, Peter disappeared.
Okay.
So we don't really know what happened to Peter Kwok, whether he got assassinated or somebody was coming after him, or if he just ran away, you know.
That's wild, man. And so hey, that's wild. And so is that within like your lineage? Or
Yeah, that's the Guangping lineage. So Kuo
okay.
Ying was my uh, great grandmaster as far as the lineage goes. So I've primarily learned Guangping from Matt Peterson and Doug Corpolongo.
Uh-huh.
And they both learned from Henry Look, who was a student of Kuo's.
Okay.
So Henry Look passed away, I want to say about 10 years ago.
All right.
And he was known more for his Xingyi
Okay.
than
Where?
his
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
oh yeah, than his Taijiquan, because he had trained Yichan with three different of Wang Shengzai's students.
So you've actually got quite a impressive litany of arts you practice. I mean, what do you actively practice as far as for like on a regular basis?
Mainly Xingyi and Bagua, and I do
Yeah.
the Guangping short form right now. I'm learning the long form, so
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
So
I know a lot more of the Jiangrong Chao Bagua Zhang than any of the arts that I've done. I would say that's my primary art.
okay. That's good stuff. What would you say like, if you're doing Xingyi and Bagua and you've got some familiarity with Tai Chi, how would you explain the differences between those to somebody? You'll figure say, "Oh, what's that? Is that karate?"
So I would say the differences are primarily the answers that you're going to give your opponent.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could say that the three sisters, they're all, very closely related, right? They have the same mom, the same dad, same theory, all that stuff, right? But they have very different answers for what the opponent's going to do.
Okay.
So if you're fighting somebody with Xingyi, your answer is no. I don't give a shit what you're going to do. No.
Yeah. I like that. Go ahead.
Okay. So Xingyi is just straight up no.
Yeah.
Just chop them down, run them over, beat them up. No. Bagua, on the other hand, is maybe. I might be nice, I might be mean. You can do what you want, maybe, but I'm going to get around to your side and your back, and I can break your neck anytime. That's why I like it, because I can easily get to the side and the back of almost anybody.
Yeah. And then a little brow mopping and it's all over.
Yeah, exactly. I love Bagua just for that reason. But
Yeah.
then you look at Taijiquan. And Taijiquan is like the person that says, sure, okay,
Here's some more.
whatever you want to do, keep talking. And they'll just let you do it.
Yeah.
But then you're gonna argue yourself into a corner and you're not gonna have any answers.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like when it's actually like realized and working, you know. Yeah, like I remember when I went to a carnival one time when I was, I don't know, 19 or 18 or something like that, young and dumb, and I don't know, had a pocket full of money, and like there was the darts thing. I'm good at darts, right? I can throw some darts at some balloons, right? And it was like, yeah, like $5 for three. I'm like, okay, sure, right? So like, $5 three, and I didn't quite get it. And he just keeps handing me darts. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, I guess I already paid for these, right? And then he's like, oh, that's $20. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? It's like, well, you throw all these darts. But It'll be $5 for every three. So, but same sort of thing, right? Just like you keep giving them more rope, right? Keep giving more rope up. But that's a great way of putting it there. Those three. That's I'm gonna hold on to those down there. Well, gosh, it's been almost an hour. I don't know how you're feeling. I know you had a pretty busy day and rushing out to get your kid and come back here. Anything you wanted to say before we close this thing up? I think we got it
Um,
covered. Yeah.
Not really big of a time thing for me right now. We got a few more minutes if you wanted to
Okay.
go for a little while longer, about 10, 15. But basically, if you're in Northern California and you want to do Xingyi and Bagua, hit me up.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah, I do the Kenny Gong style
Okay.
of Xingyi and Bagua primarily. So it's very funky looking.
Oh, right
But
on.
my Bagua doesn't look like that anymore. My Xingyi does.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a little bit of like Ray. I still kind of practice a little bit of the five elements, the Choi five elements, and I think about the Bagua sometimes, but I don't really like do the Bagua, but it's
The Choi Wai Lun
Wayland Choi, yeah,
interpretation of that Bagua is really interesting
yeah,
because it's very different from just about everybody else's.
yeah, yeah. Well, especially the Xingyi is very, it's very. I haven't seen any other Xingyi like that. It's a lot more active. Like most of them tend to like get in place and then do their thing, and he's just like skipping across the floor like a mud skipper.
Well,
Uh,
that's the Zhang Jiaodong flavor. That's
okay,
what you're seeing there. What's his name? Robert Coons was recently interviewed over on I want to say it was Kung Fu Conversations.
okay,
Randall and uh, Owen. Yeah, I think it's Owen Schilling and Randall Davis.
okay,
Um, but they interviewed Robert Coons, and he talked about kind of the differences between like the Li Sun Yi, the Zhang Jiaodong, and the Shui Lian Xing Yi Quan that he's done. And
okay.
so um, the biggest thing is like the Zhang Jiaodong stuff that Choi Wai Lun does, like they hop. There's a lot of jumping. It's just like boop, boop, boop.
Yeah.
And the thing that we have to remember is that Zhang Jiaodong was almost 7 feet tall.
That's great. Well, what I found with like the Choi style, it's like it's just like there's several power generations going on there, right? Like you've got like the kind of the leap, right? So you've got the push from the back leg and that power, and then when you hit the ground, your weight coming into the front leg, rebounding up as another power. But then he actually comes and he replaces the back leg so that it kind of like it's like a triple power.
Yeah, that's the follow step. That's pretty
Yeah.
standard.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, all lines of Xingyi are trying to do that.
Yeah.
It just
Okay.
looks different.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I mean, I only know it from this one perspective, so it's like I haven't really seen anybody else that looks. Yeah. So again, like looking like that. But and again, like the Shingy I kind of see like as just sort of a primeval Taiji in some ways. It's like a lot of like like looking at the Shingy classics, like some of the ideas are sort of there, but again, like we're using it in different ways.
Yeah.
And especially like Wayland Choi, he's got the nine joint harmony is sort of the
Well,
basic
that's
does.
from Lohabafa. So I mean,
Yeah.
he's kind of got Lohabafa as his primary art, and everything else from there kind of flows out of that.
Yeah. So like the Shingi, it's informed by that nine joint harmony. I think that, and that's closer to how I look at Taiji. Maybe because I got that first. I don't know. Maybe because of whatever. But I sort of find the Shingi is more of like an expression of the Taiji, like this sort of like a power. For me.
Yeah.
At least how I'm studying it, and I'm not saying that's the way the art should be, but like I'm just kind of using those mechanics. It's like that.
Let's
It's
talk
hard
about the mechanics of the Neja arts, right? So
Yeah.
with Shingi, you have this rolling sort of forward, going over, and
Sure.
then every once in a while you do these zigzags, right? And it's very much from bottom to top.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going from the feet out to the head and hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bagua is the opposite direction. It's from the head down to the feet.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of what our Bagua does specifically is work with the ribs, as does our Xingyi. So, I'll meet Taiji people and they'll say, yeah, I'm pushing with you, but all I can feel is arms. I'm like, yeah, that's because I know how to use my ribs. And the arms are rooted into the ribs. So
Yeah.
I don't.
Gotta lock them up, man. Gotta lock them up.
Yeah. And so, typically what would happen is, like I'd meet somebody in Taiji and if I can't just uproot them immediately, um, which happens actually. Like I'll meet people that have done decades and decades of Taiji and we push and I immediately uproot them and I just no, just
Yeah.
no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, no, no.
Yeah, that's the fault is in the leg and the feet, the waist and legs, right?
Right, right.
Yeah,
And so, that I like the Xingyi no.
yeah,
The Bagua maybe I use like if I'm really like up against somebody good.
okay,
And the Taiji, I'm still trying to listen. So I can kind of feel and see things a lot better, which I feel like Xingyi is very good at feeling, Bagua is very good at seeing, and Taiji is hearing.
yeah,
So that
okay,
would relate to Mudra, Mantra, and Mandala and Buddhist three roots.
yeah. I didn't know about that, but that's a interesting way to put it there too. Like, yeah, shifting, I guess maybe a little bit. You know, yeah. What keeps you doing this? You know what I
What
mean?
keeps me doing this is
Well,
primarily that it's kind of a mind puzzle for a long time. It was
yeah,
like, how do I figure this out? It was like trying to work a Rubik's cube, and eventually I figured out how to solve it. And I did that with Bagua. I think I know how to solve Xingyi, but I don't have enough pieces yet.
okay.
I need to build that Rubik's cube a little bit bigger.
Have you got Byron's book?
Not yet. It's pretty pricey. So
Yeah, okay, yeah, it is. Yeah, I got the T-shirt with it too, just to save on shipping.
I did get his Xingyi hoodie and the Bagua t-shirts that he put out a while ago.
Okay, yeah,
So that was great. Too bad the Xingyi hoodie, the printing on it was subpar quality. He switched manufacturers, so I'm hoping the new ones are better.
well, and I hear the Bagua is like that. Like I haven't really got into like Bagua in particular in that way, but like the whole mind puzzle thing, like it's like, oh, you want to smoke a joint and think about the trigrams for a while, do some
Yeah, yeah,
Bagua, yeah, which I love. I love thinking about like the occult nature or whatever you want to call it, the esoteric knowledge, whatever the trigrams and just sort of the numerology aspect of the Taoist system.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So, how would you say that? I mean, because I know people say a lot of stuff about Bagua, like the dragon coming down and all this kind of stuff. So, what can you say about that? Yeah.
I've had a lot of really trippy experiences with Bagua.
Yeah.
Yeah. The really eye-opening experience for me was when I received empowerments from two different lines.
Okay.
So I received an empowerment from the Dragon Gate Sanctuary lineage from Hawaii. Chris Matsuo is the founder of that style of Bagua. He put together his training from Fu Zhensong style and Gao Yishen style and kind of made a new style based off of some Taoist stuff that he had learned as well.
Okay.
And so Chris Matsuo made this one. I received my empowerment from Tim White. And when I say empowerment, I mean very much in the sense of a Buddhist empowerment. Like if you're a Tibetan Buddhist or something like that, you receive an empowerment for each god that you work with.
Okay.
And so it was very much an empowerment to Bagua and also for like Vajrayana in general. So it
Okay.
was very much like, okay, and here's how you're connected to the generic Buddha field, not through anything specific.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I did about a year of training with him. I kept receiving empowerments and ritual benefit and that sort of thing from him over that year. And then after that was done, a few months later, I received a Xingyi Bagua empowerment from Tom Morrissey, who had trained with Kenny Gong. So we did like a form they call the whisper form. From the center of the circle, like we went out from the center of the circle and then back in toward the center of the circle. And that's in the destructive pattern of the 5 elements for
Okay.
Xingyi. And then we did 2 reps of the first three palms. So left, right, left, right, left, right.
Okay.
And then we did the 9 palaces pattern, forward and backward.
Enough 9 palaces being like the magic square
Yeah.
pattern. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that magic square pattern is actually describing the orbit of Saturn.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that. That's interesting. 'Cause that's something I looked at like in the Western Hermeticism they talk about like the bright star of the morning, uh Lucifer being also Venus, and how like the was it the five-pointed star pentagram with what's his name's cult? I can't remember, Archimedes, not Archimedes, whatever. But that the five-pointed star referred to the orbit of Venus that it traced in the sky over time, and that the reason that it traces that is because of the orbits of Earth and Venus are multiples of 5 and 8, or something along those lines, like lining up just like the eight and five, like the 13 steps in Tai Chi or Bagua, like that. It's like, whoa, hold on a second here, and you start going down these like rabbit holes, of,
Right.
like all these interesting little, like we're strange connections, you know. But yeah, so yeah, that's that is good stuff. The Buddhist stuff, I believe, I do. We have a belief in initiation that in that regard, like through their Freemasons or through lineages of various sorts, various occult societies. That they're, it's not just with Freemasons that have it their own thing, but it's not just a bunch of hooey, so to speak, right?
Right.
And I suppose the more the more strongly our consciousness is sort of integrated into a particular system, the more effective such a empowerment or experience might be, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of these things are purposely interwoven into these arts, and some of these things are purposely taken out.
Yeah. It could be. I mean, the one of the they there's a lot of stuff missing from popular Yang style, as interpreted, definitely, in my opinion. It's I think people are kind of rediscovering some of the things, but people are also kind of rediscovering other things and going off in a tangent.
Yeah, well, that's the
So,
thing. I've tried to find the people that have lineage as much
yeah,
as I can, and if I can, the people that actually have Chinese language ability.
yeah,
So Jason Reed has been particularly helpful with that, and his Mao Shan courses that he's been doing online.
yeah.
I honestly don't really find that much help from like Wudong and Washan stuff as much as I do
Yeah.
from Mao Shan.
Yeah, Wudong stuff is not. I don't know. I haven't really seen much too. It seemed. Yeah, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but well,
Well,
like
it's a reconstruction. A lot of
yeah.
it is a reconstruction, and a lot of it is a tourist trap. So it just depends on which temple you go to, who you encounter, and what they're going to teach you.
Well, and I keep pointing, seeing like Wei Sun Liao, right? He's a big Wudong proponent, right? And he wrote this book called Tai Chi Classics, and he wrote a book called Tai Chi Classics, right? And so then people like they take passages of his book that have nothing necessarily to do with the actual Tai Chi Classics, and they post like little graphics of somebody doing, some pose, and it says blah 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 Tai Chi Classics, and they think that's the Tai Chi Classics. I'm like, no, dude, it's Wei Sun Liao's book, and it's just like very, I don't know, very
And his
unethical.
Tai Chi is very particular, like
Yeah,
that temple style stuff is weird.
it is. I'm sorry. I'm not going to say that. I'm saying that everybody else's Tai Chi is weird. All right, I'm just going to say that right off the bat. Everybody else's Tai Chi. I do love the Dong
Well,
style
no,
stuff.
actually, I wouldn't say that. I would say that Dong stuff, the Dong family stuff that you practice now, that stuff is not weird at all. That is super well
Oh, I love it.
structured.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, there's a saying somewhere along the line. I can't remember what it was. Some smart ass or another. It said like bad driving is universal in other people. Like and sort of the same thing. Like you get around martial artists, it's like, oh, your Tai Chi just, even though it's like perfectly good, they put in, tons of work, tons of effort. It's like good Kung Fu, but it's crap. It looks weird. It's just weird stuff. But yeah,
that's the thing is I don't really care how somebody's Kung Fu looks. Like when I touch hands with them, can they handle
yeah,
themselves?
that's the thing. It's like, because we can't. I mean, it's internal, right? Because we talk about the intention and whatnot, and like one of the things that I got recently from like the Wu writings is, we talk about circulating chi from the foot up, like in every single movement, you know, and like so, when we were expressing power, it's coming from the ground up every single time. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's not every single time because there's so many. It's like just so multidimensional, multifaceted. But like, the issuing, it's a ground up every time. It's I don't know. I don't want to get into that train. But I started like looking into like kinetic chain theory and like how that they approach it differently. I think in in Western training, but I believe the same sort of thing is at play when we talk about leading the chi in these exercises. That it's essentially just um, proprioceptive kinetic chain. How they talk about grip tests. When you think about it differently, it changes all these things we can't even see, but they can measure. Same sort of thing where like we're locked up with somebody, we think about it slightly different, and then that changes the dynamic of how we're uh, working with the energy within the system, and that might blow out the back at that point, and then they go flying for no reason. It's I don't know, good stuff.
I don't know. I've only sent somebody flying with a bung chuan. I've never really sent anybody flying doing push hands. So
Well, I sometimes, I don't like issue doing push hands because I just don't want to, knock somebody down where they're going to fall down. Because, I've seen that in class where, they just kind of come up and then, we've had people break their wrist just because they didn't know how to fall. Like, oh, they got surprised and they put their hands down and fell on in their wrist. So,
right.
and I even like doing like lighter stuff where I kind of prime somebody with with a touch on the side and prime them just right and then give them a good push on the other side, and they react so violently that they throw themselves to the ground, and like I'm trying to keep them from hurting themselves, but it's like
Yeah.
but so it's like you get like these little things, so like
So that is very interesting. You just give them a little tap on the side, right? So O Sensei from Aikido, he said 85% of his art was atemi or striking.
yeah.
So I feel like a lot of his striking, while he had the ability to like really hit somebody hard, he could just tap them on the side to make that imbalance come.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's magic. Like no.
Well, it kind of like it feels like it because like if you and you can do a demo on it sometimes if they're if you get it right. I'm not I don't know, but like if you kind of give them like a little test, like a push, and it's a trick. It's more of a trick than, but you can. It's kind of a I don't know a shadow of the legitimate technique.
Right.
Where you're following, where you're trying to prompt to follow. So basically, you give them that little bit, like, okay, I'm going to shove on you, and then they, okay, I've got this resistance coming, and they resist it. You let go, and then you act like you're going to start it. So they start the resistance, and as soon as they start the resistance, you come the other direction. But
Yeah.
it's very like a timing. But that's kind of the idea, like adhering to the intention, and just standard. It's like it. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to put into words, but it's not about hitting them. It's not about pushing them. It's not about like, it's all about like, what are they trying to do? Giving it to them, changing their understanding or changing reality underneath their understanding in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
In Buddhism, we talk about interrelationship, like this interconnected of stuff, right? And the body's
Yeah.
connected everywhere. Like if you look at my shirt, if I just twist this, like you can see it spinning all up, right?
Yeah.
So the idea that you could just like hit somebody on one side and they're going to have reaction on the other, it's basic physics.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of it is just we are applying basic physics more efficiently.
Yeah. There's no magic.
Well, there is. There is magic.
Okay. Okay. Sure. There's magic.
Yeah.
I forgot who I was talking to.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've experienced it,
Yeah.
literally this year, I'm able to eat peanuts at the age of 38.
Oh,
I've
that's great.
never
Yeah.
been able to eat peanuts in my whole life. Trust me, magic exists. I went and saw a llama. He fixed my allergies.
Well, there you go. Well, I mean, okay, so that way, magic is merely technology we don't understand yet, right?
No.
Yeah.
Magic
Well, like
is consciousness. Technological stuff is manifested material. These are very different things.
Well, no, I consider like these systems are technology. Like the thought systems, the thinking systems, the the consciousness, the methods of manipulating consciousness they are technology. They're just not like physical
You can call it
objects.
that. I just don't like that terminology because to me technology is something that we made.
Yeah. When this is
And
discovered.
yeah, a lot of what we do with magic and these esoteric stuff is revelatory. So basically an alien dropped it on me, like
Okay, sure,
yeah, and not me specifically, but I mean this is the origin story for a lot of these systems. Like I do the Dudyam Tersar tradition, which is like I said, Tersar, so it means treasure, right? New
Yeah.
treasure. New treasure meaning that like the guy who like gave this system to the world, like he literally had visions.
Mm.
And he put these practices out there, and next thing you know, people are making accomplishment with it.
Yeah.
If you're getting the results, it's legitimate, right? So
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's kind of like like my OTO friends, they'll say things like that. It's like, you know, it's, you're like, well, what are you talking about? It's kind of crazy. You're talking to angels and demons. Like, well, you know, we do the same thing and we get the same results. It's repeatable and observable. So it's, you know, we're just working with what we can repeat and observe, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so it's like, okay, I can't credit, you know, I can't, you know, yeah, there you go, man. You know, but I you know, in that like regard, like the occult studies, I kind of tend to more take like and I call it, you know, the Freemasonic approach, where it's a matter of technology of measuring and weighing and that sort of approach. So that's just like kind of my path to it, you know, more of like
Right.
you know, whatever that might be. So, but it's I love, you know, hearing the different um, perspectives on it, you know, and how it sort of works out. Because I've really, you know, I've been considering this stuff since I was a wee little tot, 10 years old or so, reading, you know, books, autobiography of a yogi and, you know, fortune telling books, you know, that kind of stuff. And then, you know, getting into the occult stuff with like Kabbalah and now the I Ching and that stuff. You know, it's I don't know what I'm getting at with it. It's interesting that, you know, if we, you know, consider, like I was talking to somebody about this last night about like Joseph Campbell and the Mass of God and the comparative, you know, religion across cultures and how they always kind of make up similar sort of stories and similar sort of personages and whatnot to tell their stories, and how that's based on our psychology, which is based on our biology, and that these systems, you know, when we talk about like John Dee's angelic language being discovered, that perhaps they're just like tied into like our lizard brain in ways, you know, and
Well, that's
we're
bullshit too. I
activating.
mean, lizard brain
Yeah.
doesn't exist, man.
Well, you know,
Tripartite brain theory is horseshit. That's like
well, you know, just
100
like
and some odd years ago of neurology theory, man. Come on.
well, you know, whatever. Just but the evolutionary brain that like our consciousness is developed around these things, you know, not call it lizard brain or whatever, but just meaning like, you know, that you know our consciousness isn't, it's developed even within my lifetime in many ways, you
Right.
know, that we've developed around these concepts based upon our biological needs. That then these sort of systems come into, you know, they like Kabbalah is based on Hebrew, which is based on like, you know, the alphabet, which is based on the shapes of things around them, you know,
Well,
like
you know,
Chinese, you know.
depending on who you talk to, that Kabbalah may not well be Judaic in origin.
Sure. Yeah.
You
But,
know,
you know, it's, there's different, you know, you get these things, but the point being that you know, what are my own thoughts on these when we talk about these systems being sort of pathways and gateways into our own connection with, you know, what might be, I don't know, beyond or common or whatnot, you know, if we look at,
yeah.
I don't know exactly what the point of getting into that divergence was, but
Well, I think esotericism is something
yeah,
that's kind of universal to humanity, regardless of what society you're in. There's some sort of esoteric aspect, right?
yeah.
Even, you know, like small villages in the jungle have a shaman typically,
Oh yeah.
you know, and you know, if you talk to these guys in the Amazon, they'll tell you, oh yeah, I'm having a war with this guy over here on the other side of the jungle, and he sent, you know, like all of these spirits toward my village, and I had to fight him off and do all this stuff, and he killed one of my people, you know, like
Yeah.
this is still happening regardless of technology and how much it advances. Consciousness is going to be there. So, you know, even
Yeah.
if, you know, global warming wipes out the US and everybody else here, you know, the planet's consciousness is still going to be here,
Yeah.
and imprints on the land are still going to be here.
Yeah.
So
The land will go on without us.
yeah, yeah, there will be life. It just won't be human.
Okay. I think that's a good note to close on, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And thank you, sir. And yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime. I'm sure there'll be more to talk about too.
Oh yeah.